You think you know the darkest pages of World War II. You know the camps, the bombs, the open battlefields. But some horrors were hidden, not in plain battle, but behind laboratory glass. Behind locked doors, men in white coats treated people like test tubes, infecting them, watching them die. This is the story of one of those secret laboratories, a unit called Unit 1855, operating in the shadows of occupied China. Presented by Biography Plus, where history's forgotten cruelties are brought into the light. In the winter of 1938, deep inside occupied Beijing, a building was transformed. What looked from the street like another military compound had a different, darker purpose. It became a place where prisoners arrived in chains, often anonymous, laborers, captives, and the unlucky who crossed imperial lines. Commanded by officers tied to a larger network that included the infamous Unit 731, this unit was organized under the military's Epidemic Prevention Department. The name stamped on some documents, Unit 1855, would remain mostly unknown outside intelligence files for decades inside. Doctors and technicians performed experiments that the world would later call crimes against humanity. They injected people with plague, cholera, and typhus. They observed symptoms. They measured pain. They recorded survival and death. Test subjects were forced to drink contaminated liquids. They were deliberately exposed to disease. From testimony gathered later, survivors and witnesses described rooms with two groups, one deliberately infected and a control group given a vaccine, and the recorded results were cruelly precise. We must be careful here. Details are shocking and some accounts are fragmentary, but the pattern is clear. Unit 1855 did not operate in chaos. It operated with bureaucratic purpose. The records indicate systematic experimentation intended to understand how epidemics spread and to test potential biological weapons. Eyewitness testimony collected after the war described the daily reality in stark terms. Rooms with mirrors and glass panels so doctors could watch, microphones used to question victims while observers recorded responses, and an atmosphere that mixed clinical detachment with a chilling normalcy. One interpreter described handing prisoners a mixture of pathogens and watching them fall sick. He wrote later that it felt like a factory of death, routine, methodical, and horrifying as the war turned. The unit grew. Branches and related facilities appeared in occupied regions. The Japanese military was building an entire network of research and epidemic units. After 1945, as defeat loomed, records show these facilities were evacuated. Some equipment was destroyed, some moved. But thousands of names and the traces of experiments remained buried in documents and oral testimony, waiting for historians to piece the truth together. Why has so little been heard compared to other wartime crimes? Part of the answer lies in post-war politics. The American occupation authorities, interested in research value and Cold War advantage, negotiated with some Japanese scientists. In that complex, shameful exchange, some information was traded for immunity, and many records remained classified or scattered. That international shadow explains why Unit 1855 stayed quieter in public memory than other atrocities, even as survivors and researchers in China and Korea continued to document names and testimony. After the war, researchers and investigators slowly began to pull the threads. Some documents surfaced. Local testimonies were recorded. In 2018, authorities disclosed lists of members connected to similar units, adding fresh scholars' leads and historical records. These archival revelations gave Unit 1855 a clearer, if dreadful, outline. Thousands implicated, experiments documented, a long human toll estimated in hundreds to thousands. What did the world know? In the public eye, Unit 731 became the shorthand for biological experimentation by the Japanese military. Unit 1855 did not have Unit 731's global notoriety, but its actions were part of the same network, an imperial system that prioritized military advantage over human life. Documentaries, museums, and new scholarship have gradually widened the story, but public awareness remains uneven. Unit 731 draws wide viewership and political attention. The smaller units like 1855 still wait for full reckoning. So where does responsibility lie? For decades, victims' families and historians have demanded truth, apologies, and memorials. Some nations have issued statements. Some researchers have compiled names and testimonies. Some artifacts have been preserved in museums and exhibitions. Yet questions remain about knowledge that was withheld, about how wartime science was traded for immunity, and about the moral cost of prioritizing national strategy over human dignity. For Biography Plus viewers, the lesson is urgent. The quiet bureaucracies of war can hide moral collapse. When medicine becomes a tool of conquest rather than healing, the consequences are measured in human lives. Unit 1855 is not a distant myth. It is a reminder that transparency, accountability, and historical memory matter, or we risk repeating the worst chapters of the past. If you wish to explore this further, historians point to several primary sources and scholarly works, and modern investigations continue to uncover names and evidence. The story of Unit 1855 is still being written. This was a Biography Plus investigation into Unit 1855, one of the lesser-known but deeply disturbing chapters of wartime human experimentation. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to Biography Plus. We will continue to dig into history's hidden crimes, not to shock without reason, but to remember, to learn, and to demand a better future.